Hello? Is this thing on? Can the Kirby on Sports, listeners hear me? Good, because we have a big show today, ladies and gentlemen. We are introducing a new segment called The Drive. Yes, there are questions that you probably have. Why is Carlos the Swiss Army Knife Martinez opening the show? I will answer that once we come back from this intro. Yes, what is up, everybody, and welcome back to Christian Pulisic's favorite podcast, the Kirby on Sports podcast, episode 170. I will be your humble host today, Carlos the Swiss Army Knife Martinez. Why, you ask? Because the man, the myth, the legend, Josh Kirby is off-site today, but he's still joining us live from his other job, at the radio station. The man,
yes, sir.
Josh Kirby. What's going on, Kirby?
Well, first and foremost, I appreciate you doing this because, this time of year, it's basketball season. And, I'm fumbling around and it's like, I have some downtime, but stuff can come up like that. And who else? But that's why this is such a great team. And you, Carlos, the Swiss Army Knife, and Dan, the Weapon, because I can trust you two to help me out with the show when I'm not able to, but I'm here for the time being, and I'm just ready to talk some sports, and let's have some fun with it.
Yeah, let's definitely have some fun as my dog goes crazy in the background. Sorry about that. Let's bring in the Weapon, Dan Dembski, the third member of the three-man booth. What's going on, Dan?
Let's go. Not a lot, man. That was a hell of an intro. I didn't know Christian Pulisic was such a fan of ours. That's news to me.
It's a long held secret that this is his favorite podcast.
Well, damn, now it's out. That's too bad. But maybe that'll help. Maybe that'll help the listenership a little bit. Let's go.
All right. Well, boys, we have a big show today. We're introducing a new segment. We're scrapping the format that we normally do, where we normally do either three, deep dives and then the hurry up offense, which is never hurry up. So instead, we had a staff meeting, I guess you could say, in the group chat. And we decided to scrap the whole format, and we're doing something new. So, where are my manners? Where are my manners? First off, boys, how was your guys' Thanksgiving?
Kirby, please.
Pretty good. I had some fun eating turkey, just the normal setup turkey, food, a lot of food, and football. Pretty exciting game. So I couldn't complain. My Thanksgiving was fine. And then Black Friday, it was even better. So,
Did you get anything nice?
Cool? Yeah, look at you.
I got a United States draw, baby.
Fair enough.
Good point. Great point.
I wasn't really going to bring up the World Cup here, but we might bring up the World Cup a little later. We got a lot to get to. How about you, Dan? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good, man. It was a nice time to just lay back and relax, and just like Kirby said, eat a lot of food, enjoy a lot of good football, and have just enough patience to deal with my family, which was good. No, I'm just kidding. It was fun. So, and we played some games as well as a family, which we haven't done in a while, which
that's always a good time.
was really nice as well. Yep.
It's always a good time. What games do you guys play?
Played some old dominoes called you basically just match up dominoes. It's a pretty easy game, but it gets competitive. Some people get cutthroat with it. So I was not. I was a gentleman. I was a sportsman and a gentleman, so
which means you weren't, but it's fine.
yeah. What can you do? It
All right,
happens.
boys, are we ready to introduce this new segment?
Let's do it.
I'm ready.
All right. Presented by Barrett Pest and Termite Services, we introduce to you The Drive.
Bedbugs. The only thing creepier than thinking about them is actually having them. Trust me, you don't want to have them. Locally owned and operated Barrett Pest and Termite Services can keep you from having bedbug nightmares and infestations. Call 540-340-3922 to schedule your free inspection and consultation. If bedbugs are already in your home, we'll get rid of them so you can rest easy. We also specialize in keeping homes and businesses free of other pests, including rodents and termites. That's Barrett Pest and Termite Services, 540-340-3922.
And before we continue, I'd like to, of course, thank the rest of our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, and Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate, who, of course, without their sponsorships, I guess you could say, this podcast would not be possible. All right. Are we ready, gentlemen?
Already, let's
I'm
rock
ready.
and roll.
I'm all set. I'm looking forward to this.
All right. So the drive will be basic. Normally on a normal week, it'll be three segments. You got the 1 o'clock games, you got the 4 o'clock games, and then you got the 2 primetime games, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. But because it was such a special week, we have to add a fourth segment, the Thanksgiving games, because of course we had games on Thanksgiving. So we're going to start with the Thanksgiving games. Are we ready?
Let's feast.
All right.
That was
Great
lame.
answer.
That was a little delayed.
Great answer. No, that was great answer. All right, boys. Let's start first with the Bills versus the Lions. The Bills pulling out a close one, surprisingly, 28-25. You know, the Bills' second game in Detroit. What were your guys' thoughts on this game?
Well, the Bills. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I should have thrown it to somebody. That's my fault. Rookie
Yeah.
mistake.
You're all good. It's his podcast. He goes first. Go ahead.
I apologize, Stan. Manners are
All good.
Yeah, but anyways, this game, you know, everybody had a narrative of like, oh, you know, the Lions are crumbling. They're not doing so well. The Lions fought really hard. I'm not sure what you all thought about the game, but I thought the Lions battled in this game really hard. And I thought they almost had the Bills. But, I mean, the Bills are just a better team. And they had that drive. Josh Allen coming in clutch to Diggs, that 35, 40-yard bullet pass, and getting the job done. So, I mean, the game was exciting. Good Thanksgiving football to watch. But
surprisingly for a Lions game.
Yeah, for the Lions. But still, I mean, the Bills obviously were the better team because they were able to close it out. But I mean, hats off to the Lions because they lost to the Bills 28-25, which everybody thought going into this game would be a blowout. But I did like for example, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He had a really impressive game, in my opinion. I think Jared Goff made good decisions with the football in terms of passing, making smart decisions. And I think the Lions had a pretty good game plan. But unfortunately, when it came down to that last minute, Josh Allen drove down and they kicked the field goal. So, and another thing, the amount of missed field goals I saw in this game from close range in a dome, I was sort of confused about that too. But other than that, it was very exciting football from what I saw. But Josh Allen, he played decent, did throw that interception. But still, the Bills, the better team because they drove down the field and won.
A couple stats here before you give us your thoughts on the game, Dan. I mean, Jared Goff, 23 for 37, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jameson Williams had himself a little bit of a day. 18 carries for 66 yards, 1 touchdown. And like Kirby mentioned, Aquam St. Brown, 9 receptions, 122 yards, and 1 touchdown. On the Bills side, Josh Allen was 24 for 42 for 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He was their leading rusher with 10 carries, 78 yards. Of course, Singletary had 14 carries for 72 yards. And a relatively spread out performance for the receivers. McKenzie had 6 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. Diggs had 8 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. And Davis had 4 receptions for 38 yards. I mean, the stats were kind of crazy. So what were like, how did you view the performance?
Yeah, I think Kirby said it well. This Lions team is a scrappy one, and they've been that way most of the season. If you think about a lot of their losses, they've been close. They have had a couple games where I was going to say they have had a couple games where it's been a little lopsided, but for the most part, I feel like they've played competitive football, and you see the passion with Dan Campbell whenever they win. He's just a passionate coach in general. But I was impressed with the Lions. The thing is with the Bills, when you're playing a team of that caliber, you have to play perfect down the stretch, especially at the end of that game, and you can't give Josh Allen a chance to drive down at the end of the game and win it. And he's going to find a way. I'd say 9 out of 10 times. Not always the case. We've seen it before. But I think I was surprised how close this game was. I think this was a chance for the Bills to sort of come out and show that they're in. I think they're still an upper tier team, but to really separate themselves from other teams in the AFC, because quite frankly, to me, it's Kansas City, and then I think everybody else just sort of falls in line, and you can debate who's second, third, fourth, whatever. And the Bills to me still, like I said, I think they're still a top tier team, but you can't let a team like Detroit hang around, and I felt like they just didn't do enough, especially there in the third quarter, to put the game away. Obviously, they got a safety there in the third quarter. That was the only points. But yeah, I think both you guys covered it well. Josh Allen is, obviously he's human after all. That's a lot of passing attempts, 42 passing attempts in one game. It's there's going to be mistakes made, and obviously I think if you're playing a higher caliber opponent, you probably see a couple more interceptions when you're throwing at that rate. But it helps to have the weapons that Josh Allen has. The Lions are an interesting team because I think they've shown that they can pretty much stick with any team in this league, except, like you said, the Patriots game. I think that kind of bodes well for Dan Campbell, quite frankly, moving forward. If they do decide to bring him back, because he can say, hey, look, we've been competitive in these games. We really don't have a lot we don't have a lot of weapons on offense. And, we're still kind of a young team trying to figure everything out. So yeah, it's, and the Lions usually play very poorly on Thanksgiving, as you mentioned. I'm not sure what their record is on Thanksgiving, but it's pretty abysmal in the last 20 years or so. So I'm impressed from that standpoint. The Bills did what they had to do. Great teams find a way to win, no matter how ugly or no matter how it happens. So you got to give the Bills credit for that. But they definitely have a target on their backs, I think, right now. We've seen some of the weaknesses with this team, and we're going to see down the stretch, who comes after them in a way and exposes some more of those weaknesses right now.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the weapons talk that you were talking, I mean, coming from the weapon, in terms of
what can you say
for Detroit? They obviously have the wide receiver from Alabama that they drafted that he hasn't played this season because of his ACL injury. So they have that guy eventually coming back. Probably we won't see his best version of himself until next year. It looks like he might be able to play a little bit here at the end of the season, but he pretty much gives he gives them another threat. Like he's a vertical threat down the field. So for that, they do have an answer, but I think Dan Campbell's coming back for sure, because I mean, this Lions team is very competitive, and it's only a matter of time before, they just need some weapons here and there, that they can get through the draft. Cause obviously they're not going to get anybody big through free agency. Who wants to go to Detroit, willingly, let's be honest here. they're going to be able to build through the draft and hopefully maybe build themselves a team that they used to have when they had like the Stafford and they had Megatron and they had Dominic Sue on that defensive side. I think they're a few pieces away from being from being able to at least achieve a winning record here. In terms of the Bills, I mean, I just think they're kind of going through a slump right now. They're obviously dealing with some injuries. Von Miller's hurt, of course. He's been a big piece of that defense. Josh Allen's also not playing at 100%, but he's still slinging it 42 times, which is insane considering that he had an injury to a ligament in his elbow. That had people very concerned, and here he is just
like a Tommy John type injury too.
It's
just nuts.
If I could just bring up one point, I know I caught the tail end. You were talking about Dan Campbell and stuff, but I agree that he's not going to get fired because I mean Detroit's had more wins this year than last year, first and foremost, and it's going to take a long time to get the Lions back to where they were. And I'm not saying Jared Goff is or is not the answer, but I think he's a decent placeholder for the time being, and they can either move to continue developing Jared Goff or go with another quarterback through the draft or something of that nature. But I just think Dan Campbell, I think he has 1 or 2 more years, and I think he'll continue to slowly build and change the Detroit Lions. And with this game in particular, they play really hard.
Yeah, but that's been their identity all season thus far. So, I mean, it's nothing we haven't seen. I mean, they took the Eagles to the brink. Like, it took the Eagles everything to beat them. Of course, that was early in the season, but still, it still looks pretty good on the resume. Like, hey, like we were close to beat they had to score so many points to beat us.
Yeah, and also back to your point about Dan Campbell. I mean, it's a tough job to come in there and be expected to turn around that organization that's had so many issues. And you talk about teams with front office problems. I think Detroit, I mean, they've been a dysfunctional front office for, I mean, I couldn't even tell you how long. I'd say even when they were winning, and winning, with Matt Stafford, which basically meant making the playoffs. I think I'm trying to think like maybe 2 or 3 times while he was there, something along those lines. They always were competitive, but even back then, their front office was still kind of a mess. So I think it sort of starts there, and that's not something Dan Campbell can fix, right? I mean, he's just the head football coach. He just has to come in and get these guys ready for game day. So I definitely think he'll be back. I know I've given him a lot of shit over the past year. And I know I've said that he's not fit to be a head coach in the NFL, but that's, you can see what the players really feel about him. They would, I think, run into a battlefield for this guy. And I think we've seen that. And obviously, he's a hell of a motivator. And I think the biggest thing you have to address, you mentioned, Kirby, Jared Goff's performance. He's played decent, but they've got to address that offensive line. He's just doesn't have a lot of time to throw the football in general. And let's face it, he's not the most mobile guy either. So you have to take that into account as well. So that's got to be the first thing Detroit does in this offseason is you've got to shore up that offensive line. You've got to find a way to protect your quarterback, especially a guy like Jared Goff, who has playoff and Super Bowl experience. So I think that has to be priority number 1 for this front office in general.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions that are going to come with that. Of course, the Bills beat the Lions 28-25. We're going to move on to the next game. I should probably recuse myself from this conversation considering, I have personal ties to this case. But you know what? I don't give a damn, okay? Because finally, in a long time, it's been so long since I've been able to enjoy a Thanksgiving, the Dallas Cowboys beat the New York Football Giants 28-20 in what people have been dubbing the Odell Bowl, which I guess we can get into that in a little bit.
Not anymore, I'd say. He got kicked off a plane.
that means nothing. That literally means nothing. But okay.
Well, I didn't know if it meant anything for the team.
It literally has not affected anything on that.
No.
So we don't even need to bring that up anymore.
There's two sides to every story. That's all I'll say about that.
I don't know. But anywho, now Kirby threw me off. Thanks a lot, man. Anyways, boys, what'd you guys think about the performance from the Cowboys and the fact that it took them a little bit to get into the game? Obviously, going into halftime, it was 13-7, but coming out of halftime, Dallas pretty much dominated the game. New York eventually got another touchdown to make the scoreline look a little more favorable, like they were in the game. But in reality, they were outplayed in that second half. What did you guys think of this game?
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, this was a game for Dallas to come out and really show and prove that they are a solid team, that they are who we thought they were. And this, especially that they are who you thought they were, Carlos. And I think they did that in this game. They pretty much, like you said, they pretty much dominated in the second half. I thought they adjusted really well, and they just played a complete second half. And we haven't really seen that from Dallas a whole lot this year, where they've really had it working on both sides of the football. So that's what I was really impressed with. And this is, let's face it, they have one of the toughest defenses in the NFL. And, they I didn't even pull up the stats here. Sorry, I'm not prepared. So shame on me.
While you're pulling those up, can I just mention?
Sure. Go ahead. Go for it.
I felt like there were a ton of penalties in this game. Like the refs were getting in the way a lot.
I mean, to that, I will say they didn't get involved as much as last year's Thanksgiving game. Last year's Thanksgiving game was literally all about the refs. It was the Cowboys against the Raiders and the referees. And it was absolutely insane last year when I recalling that game. So I do believe there was a lot of penalties in this game, but it wasn't as bad as last year's Thanksgiving game. But it's still something that both teams need to clean up for sure.
Yeah.
But before we throw back to Dan, I mean, can we talk about how beautiful those throwbacks were, though? I miss those jerseys so much. Those jerseys are so beautiful. I love them.
Yeah, those jerseys are pretty sick. Not gonna lie. A lot of teams have some bad throwbacks. Definitely a team that has pretty solid throwbacks, and I mean they've always had good jerseys. Let's be honest. But I would say in this game the key takeaway for me was I think just like I said, like Dallas was out to prove themselves. I think the Giants were as well, and I don't know if I'd call them frauds per se. I feel like they had a pretty easy schedule for the most part in the wins they did have, and we're kind of seeing now the true New York Giants. I mean, when you look at Saquon Barkley, he was totally shut down in this game. And Dallas's defense deserves all the credit in the world for that, holding him to just 39 yards, which is insane. And they didn't force any interceptions on Daniel Jones, but I felt like Dallas's pressure was key, especially in that incomplete pass to Saquon. I think that was in the fourth quarter, which pretty much ended the game. And then, like you said, Carlos, of course, they got a garbage time score. So the score looked more respectable. Yeah, but this was a key game for Dallas. Huge win for them. They finally they've gotten the running game going now. That's a couple weeks in a row where we've seen they've been impressive. Zeke obviously with 92 yards, and then Tony Pollard adding 60 yards to that. Really good combination when you have a power back and you have more of a speed guy like Dallas does. And then Dak had a good game as well. A little bit rusty. He did have 2 interceptions, but you can make those mistakes when you have a defense that's as good as Dallas's defense. You can put trust in them to know they're going to be able to get off the field or force a turnover or whatever the case is. So big win for Dallas. I think the Giants' luck magic streak has run out. And I still think Brian Daboll is a great coach. I think he's been coach of the year, debatable, right? I think we could discuss that.
He's a very passionate head coach. If you saw early in that game on Thanksgiving, not too happy there on Thanksgiving after that call.
Yeah, he's a fired up kind of guy. There's no question about it. But
The
yeah,
memes
I
were
think that
circling everywhere after that. I was like, oh my
I'm
gosh.
sure you reposted all of them, so we get a chance to go back and see. Just giving you a hard time, but yeah, great win for Dallas. It really, this first half was kind of like a classic NFC East matchup where it was, low scoring, very defensive battle. But the second half, Dallas really opened things up, and I was impressed. I was impressed with how they closed the game out and really did it on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean the second half adjustments were really big for Dallas because, like I said, that first half was very stressful. I mean, I felt the nerves coming up again. Like, oh my God, are they really gonna do this again? Like on Thanksgiving? Like, come on, like let's not like every year. Like, come on, like just let me enjoy. Let me enjoy the holiday, right? And
Right.
but no, I mean they came out the second half. They really lit it up. I mean 14. I mean it was pretty much 21 unanswered points. Then eventually the Giants got a touchdown at the end of the game. So it was a pretty solid performance. I was very satisfied with the second half. You brought it up, like Ezekiel Elliott. Again, this is why we need both of them because Tony Pollard, he's a great running back and everything, but Zeke really opens it up for Tony Pollard in terms of, again, Zeke is the thunder, Pollard is the lightning, right? Zeke wears down the defense, and then that's when Pollard really comes through. I also want to shout out the tight ends. I mean, Dalton Schultz had 4 receptions, 31 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jake Ferguson, I think it was a 4th rounder out of Wisconsin who nobody knew anything about, had 3 receptions for 57 yards. And then we have a third one. I can't remember his name right now. His name escapes me. But he also had a pretty solid game, not maybe reception wise, but he definitely helped on like pass blocking and run blocking. So and then their awesome celebration of the whack-a-mole in the Salvation Army was absolutely awesome. So I mean, good times rolling in Dallas. Now I'll ask you, Dan, do you think Dallas needs Odell, or do you think it's a good idea for them to bring Odell, or do you think they might be making a mistake bringing in Odell Beckham Jr.?
It's really tough because obviously we know what happened in the Super Bowl last year where he tore his ACL, and it's been, almost 9 months now since that. Well, I guess it's more than 9 months now. I can't do math. But I don't think they need him. I think Dallas has enough weapons to where it's not necessary. I think there are a lot of other teams out there, Baltimore, that have nothing. That could use someone, just anyone at this point, who is at least sort of well known to help them out. So I don't think Dallas really needs him. I think like I said, I think CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. You mentioned Dalton Schultz had a really good game. Then of course, you can also use Zeke and Tony Pollard in the passing game as well. I don't really think it's necessary to bring Odell Beckham into the fold. Plus, I don't really know. You don't really know how he's going to be till he steps on a football field and it's game time, right? You don't know how he's going to be able to cut with that ACL, repaired ACL per se. So definitely a concern. So I would say no.
I mean, so I say yes, right? I think bringing in Odell only helps the team in terms of the fact that he wouldn't have to be the number 1 guy, right? That would be CeeDee. He wouldn't have to be the number 2 guy because that is Michael Gallup. He would be the 3rd wide receiver on this team, so he wouldn't have to bear the load. And he would, and I'm pretty sure Odell would understand that. He had a conversation with Jerry Jones on Thanksgiving. They had a FaceTime call, and they talked. Odell's obviously on his little tour right now. He's going to visit the Giants, the Bills, and then he's going to finish with Dallas. Obviously, that shows Jerry has a lot of confidence in the fact that he's going to go see those other places, but when he gets here, he's not going to want to leave. So it'll be interesting to see how the Odell sweepstakes kind of goes. It looks like Dallas is the front runner right now, but you just never know. I think New York is for sure out of the running just because they also play on a turf field. I mean, all three teams play on a turf field, but the legend of MetLife's turf is infamous. It's taken so many ACLs just like FedEx Field has, and FedEx Field is natural grass, which is insane. But
theirs just fully maintained.
There's that. But yeah, I mean, I think. I think he adds more. And again, the NFC is wide open essentially. Like we've already shown that we can crush the Vikings. We're going to, we're looking towards, Christmas Eve where we're going to, we're obviously have the big game against the Eagles where we truly believe we're the better team than the Eagles. We don't really put a lot of stock in that, in that first game just because, we didn't have Dak Prescott in that game, and this team wasn't at this level, and yet we were still competitive in that game. And we see the Eagles, while their offense got jump started again this week. They didn't necessarily, their defense really struggled to put the Packers away. So like, how are they going to handle our offense? And then we have a much better defense than Green Bay's defense. So we'll see how that goes. But so the way we see it is like, hey, like the NFC is there for the taking. Like, let's just go get it. And I think the Joneses are finally starting to see that too. And that's why they're willing to take an investment on Odell.
Yeah, and I just want to add lastly, I think you made a good point about Odell when you said he doesn't have to be the number one guy in Dallas. And it's kind of the same situation when he was with the Rams. Like, they didn't need him to be the number one guy. They had Cooper Kupp. I'm trying to think of who else. Van Jefferson as well. So he was sort of like a 2 to 3 guy. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the same thing it would be in Dallas. I mean, he's not going to be playing above CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, I wouldn't think. I mean, those guys are well-established stars in this league and on that team. So, yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think I changed my opinion, but certainly something to think about that I hadn't considered before. So. Absolutely. Yeah, big. It's definitely the game against Philly, a huge barometer for both teams. We're going to see, is Philly really legit? Are they really what their record says they are? And then for Dallas, I mean, if they're able to beat Philly, Dallas is probably the best team in the NFC. I mean, there's really no question in my mind.
I mean, don't forget the 49ers are out there. The 49ers are looking pretty good, at least defensively right now. I mean,
yeah, but they've been.
We'll get to that game.
Yeah, they've been too inconsistent for my liking, I think. But that's just me.
We'll get to that. So, with that being said, the Cowboys beat the Giants 28-20. All right, one more Thanksgiving game. We have the primetime game, I guess you could say. Didn't really necessarily pay too much attention to this game. By that point, I was already sported out, I guess you could say, because we had World Cup games going on, and then obviously we had the 2 Thanksgiving games, and then at that time I was also eating dinner, so I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. So I caught the tail end of the game though, because I saw it was like still super competitive. And of course I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings defeating the New England Patriots 33-26. Kirby, I'm going to throw it to you. What did you think of this performance from Mac Jones? It was a great comeback performance. He was 28 for 39 for 382 yards and 2 touchdowns. And what did you think of the Vikings' response to, come to being able to overcome the short week after the shellacking that the Dallas Cowboys gave them on Sunday?
It was a very back and forth game, in my opinion. Mac Jones played his heart out, and you could tell after the game he aggressively threw his helmet in frustration. Because obviously a quarterback that's going to play so hard like Mac Jones did in that game is going to get frustrated when they don't come out with the win. I feel like the Vikings, a huge confidence booster after this game because like you said, the Cowboys killed them short week, and they responded to that adversity and managed to get the win to improve to 9-2. So I think that was huge. But Mac Jones, I think he had one heck of a performance. I think they just played really well. It was back and forth, some very competitive football in that late slate. Like I had to stay up and watch the whole thing. And to be honest with you, with the short week and everything, I picked the Patriots. I'll be honest with you, I picked the Patriots because I didn't think the Vikings could rebound after a short week after that blowout loss. But I'm very pleased at the way how Minnesota handled that, got back, and defeated New England in a close game. And
well, another thing that you have to factor in is the fact that it's a primetime game and it's Kirk Cousins, and historically he does not perform well during a night game. So there's that too.
I remember that too. So
as Kirby would know firsthand,
firsthand, he would know.
Absolutely. But I mean, a great performance all around. I still feel like the Patriots are looking good enough to get a wild card, I'd say. But I mean, it's Bill Belichick, and I think Mac Jones is molding very well within the Patriots system. And it was just.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if we can say that because in the past few weeks he's really struggled. This is the first game where he actually came out and had a very good performance. Mm-hmm. He hasn't looked. I mean, there's been a bunch of Patriots fans claiming for Zappy to come back. That they're Zappy guys. That this Mac Jones experiment is done and over with. That he's not the same guy from last year. Well, this is the first game where he looked like the same dude from last year.
Yeah, I mean, there could be an argument about that too, but I mean, I just think the coach quarterback, Bill Belichick, he's been in multiple Super Bowls, and if anybody can like mold a quarterback better, I feel like it's Belichick and Jones, but who knows? I could be completely wrong, but all in all, this was a very competitive and exciting football game to watch to wrap up Thanksgiving while eating some more pumpkin pie with whipped cream and ice cream. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with primetime football on a Thursday night with pumpkin pie and whipped cream and ice cream.
He had to say it twice, but Dan,
I love it.
It was so good.
But Dan, do you think this reestablishes the Vikings as a top contender? Do you think that they're still in the race for the number 1 seed? I mean, they're only a game behind, Philly. Of course, Philly does own the tiebreaker on them. So, say Philly does lose to Dallas later on in the season, it would be, it would be it would be the Vikings taking them over. Like, do you think that they're still in this race? Do you think they're going to stay the solid number 2? Like, what do you think on that?
I think they're definitely still in it. I think the Vikings have a more impressive resume, especially with beating Buffalo. That puts them, they definitely played tougher teams than Philly has. So I think I would put them up there. And keep in mind, we still have 7 weeks left? Yeah, if I can do math. So anything can happen. I mean, we've seen week to week, we've seen a lot of upsets in this league. So, one of these teams is going to slip up, right? It's just a matter of when and against what opponent it's going to be. So I definitely think the Vikings are still in it for the number 1 overall seed. It's just, I don't know. You can't expect a team to come out and blow out another team in the National Football League. It's just not going to happen. So, obviously Dallas put that, they put down my theory last week. So that's not a great theory, but it's rare, right? It doesn't happen a lot. The talent, what's the talent? What's the word I'm looking for here? I do this once a podcast. I just can't think of disparity. There really is none in this league. Everybody is professional level. So I think Minnesota can get there. I think what it's going to come down to is what Kirk Cousins is going to show up. You know what I mean? We've all seen what Philly can do. We know they're a pretty solid team, and they have a really, really talented playmaker in Jalen Hurts. And we're going to talk about them. Mm-hmm. So I do think Minnesota can get there. And, this could be Kirk Cousins saying, look, you paid me all this money. This is what I'm here to do. And proving once and for all that he is worth the money that he's being paid, because he really has never proven that, even in the times he was franchise tagged in Washington for that, ridiculous sum that they were paying him then. That was a long-winded answer. But yeah, I definitely think Minnesota is still alive and well. Obviously, the blowout loss to the Cowboys didn't boost a lot of people's confidences, but there's still a lot of season left to play, and I think Minnesota can secure that number 1 overall seed.
Do you think,
especially in that division too, especially playing in the NFC North?
Well, I mean, they've essentially already won the NFC North. Like, with the Packers loss to the Eagles, which again we'll talk about later. Like, they're for sure.
Yeah,
they have it locked up. They have such a lead, and it just doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers is ever going to get it going. So, do you think the Patriots have a shot at making the playoffs? Because right now, I believe they are on the outside looking in. I don't believe they're in the playoffs. They're like right outside, though.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I do think they have a chance to sneak in. I guess they would most likely be a 7 seed. I don't think I could see them getting any higher than that. But listen, Bill Belichick finds a way. He's been sneaky in the past, even since Brady left. Like, they haven't been the most talented team in the AFC, but the Patriots have been sort of on the cusp, I think. And I think this is definitely the most talented team they've had since Brady's left. And Mac Jones, if he can continue to just take care of the football, I think that's the biggest thing for him. I mean, obviously true with every quarterback, but especially in his case, because he's had, his reputation has been that he turns the football over in crunch time and stuff like that. I think that's going to be key for them. So I could definitely see the Patriots sneaking in at the 7 seed, but it's just hard to tell. I think it's too early to say how things are going to shape out. I think all we know in the AFC is that it's Kansas City and probably Buffalo second, and then from there, who freaking knows? Those division leads could shift and change. I'm not even confident the AFC North that the Ravens are the best team there. So obviously we'll talk about that later as well. But yeah, the Patriots can get in, I think. And if they don't, I think it'll come down to the end of the season for them, quite frankly.
Yeah. I think they can sneak in too, but it's going to take a mass, because there's a lot of teams competing for those wild card spots right now. So it'll take it's going to take a lot. They're going to have to win a lot, and they're going to have to, hope that some of these other teams kind of fall off before they can officially,
Absolutely
feel like they're safe in. All right, well, we got through the first slate of games. We're going to take a quick break, listen to some ads from our sponsors. We'll see you guys on the other side.
For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com.
Hey there, this is Mark Francis of Icon Real Estate. If you have any real estate needs in the Winchester surrounding area, including West Virginia, give me a call. I've got extensive experience, been in the business for almost 20 years, and would love to help you out. Track me down at Icon Real Estate, iconsells.com, or even give me a call, 540-247-1527. Again, Icon Sells, ICONSELLS.com, and I would love to chat with you and help you out. Give me a call.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. I am, of course, your host for the day, Carlos the Swiss Army Knife Martinez, joined by Dan the Weapon Dembski. Kirby is doing some stuff. He's working
business
at the moment, so he'll jump on as soon as he can again. All right, Dan, we're gonna kind of fly through some of these games. There's not a lot to say on
Agreed.
some of them. And then we'll obviously, because I'm pretty sure we're gonna have a long discussion on the Ravens. So, and there's just a lot of games we have to get through. So we'll probably just jump quickly through the Dolphins Texans. The Dolphins blow out the Houston Texans 30-15. Dan, what did you think about this game?
Just you just saw the difference of organizations, quite frankly. I mean, the Dolphins needed a kind of a blowout win. I felt like they got it, and of course they had to face poor Kyle Allen in this game. And yeah, this was just a runaway train, and Houston is just they're pathetic. They're pathetic. They're a 1-9 team now. 1-9-1. Sorry.
Yeah,
Gotta
they
make
are
sure
for
you get that
sure
tie in
the
there.
worst team in the NFL right now.
No question.
Where do you think this puts Tua in the MVP conversations?
He had a pretty solid game. I don't know. It's just very tough right now. I think it's going to be hard to catch Patrick Mahomes and what he's been able to accomplish. And I would say he's probably in the top 4. You can argue order, of course, and quarterbacks are going to always get the benefit of the doubt in the MVP race. We know that. He has played great, but listen, he's got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I mean, and I think no matter what quarterback you put with those receivers, that the quarterback's going to look great. But it's tough. It's tough. I can't pick an MVP right now, but I certainly think you have to put Tua up there. Because he's been so impressive this year.
Yeah, I think for sure I think Tua might be number 3, actually. I think my list goes Patrick Mahomes, of course, number 1, Jalen Hurts, number 2, and then Tua, number 3. So it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up here coming down the stretch. Next game, the Bengals and a nail biter again against the Titans, 20-16. Dan, of course, it really looked like Joe Burrow has a swagger back. This looked like a Bengals win from last season. They obviously are doing this without Jamar Chase. It looks like Jamar Chase might be coming back this week, but I think this is something that Joe Burrow really needed to show that, hey, I'm not successful just because I have Jamar Chase. I'm successful because I'm that guy. I'm him. So what did you think about the Bengals' performance and the fact that, once again, the Titans cannot beat the Bengals at home?
I have a confession to make. So I wrote the Bengals off stupidly. I don't remember how long ago it was. I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever they were struggling. Time just sort of goes in a circle, it seems like. But you're exactly right, Carlos. They have found their mojo, and they are right now the hot team, I think, in the AFC. A team that I think is rising, that is hot, not a team that stayed there. That makes them extremely dangerous.
Peaking at the right time is what you're trying to say.
They're exactly peaking. Thank you very much. See, this is why we do the podcast together.
Exactly.
We finish each other's sandwiches. But anyway, you said it well. I mean, T. Higgins had a heck of a game, 114 yards and a touchdown. And I think Cincinnati's got a good enough defense. I mean, if you're able to, Derrick Henry had a couple of solid plays for the Titans in this game, but they did just enough late in the game. I mean, they only held him to 38 yards. So, I mean, what else could you really do? Ryan,
my theory is correct. He's not the greatest running back.
He's not. He's very hard to tackle, and we all know across the league there's not good tackling really at all. So
no. If
you don't wrap well against Derrick Henry, you're going to get plowed over, and you're going to be on a highlight reel. So the Bengals are just a really, really solid, well coached team, and they certainly were written off. Not just by me. I think a lot of people thought that this was an off season for them. Super Bowl hangover. We all talked about it on this show. Not to be. I mean, it's still a long way to go, but they're very, very dangerous team right now. And God, just think about when they get Jamar Chase back, what kind of wrinkle that's going to add again to this offense, because you really have to devote 100% attention to him, because he can kill you. He can kill you one-on-one. He can kill you in zone too. So, man, it makes me very, very nervous. This was a huge win for Cincinnati. I was surprised by the outcome of this game, especially being on the road as well. I thought Tennessee would find a way to pull away in this game late, but got to give credit to the Bengals and Joe Burrow. Like you said, he is that guy. I mean, he's proven. The guy's been a winner since he's been there, despite the first season where he got hurt. But yeah, this is a very dangerous team, and I would want to play them coming up. And unfortunately,
my Kansas City Chiefs have him next. So
your Kansas City Chiefs have him next. It's gonna be a tough game.
It's gonna be. This is definitely gonna be a playoff game, and it's a chance for the Chiefs to obviously get revenge on what happened last season where we lost to them twice. So the Bengals, of course, beating the Titans 20-16. Let's move on to the next game. The Panthers pulling off, and I guess kind of a surprising big victory. I guess not surprising in victory because the Broncos have been terrible, but they beat the Denver Broncos 23-10. Of course, the story really coming out of this game was the fact that one of the defense, I don't remember which player it was from the Denver Broncos, getting into Russell Wilson's face during the game. And then, of course, the story that came out today, this is kind of a Kirby nugget because only Kirby would usually bring stuff up like this, of the fact that it was Russell Wilson's birthday. He had a birthday party and only half the team showed up to his party when the whole team was invited. I mean, trouble in Denver. What do you think, Dan? Like, what did you think of the Panthers' performance with Sam Donald? Is it Darnold or Donald? Donald Duck. Yeah.
Donald Duck.
His first game back, obviously he was injured. And what did you think of that performance? And what do you think about this? I mean, is this the worst trade ever in NFL history? The Seahawks have clearly won this trade.
It's tough to say whether it's the worst trade, but it's got to be up there, especially with all the money they decided they were going to pay him outright before he even stepped on the field in a Broncos uniform. I'll start. You said obviously Sam Darnold. I think he played pretty well. The thing that I was impressed with Darnold, that I think Baker Mayfield has had issues with, is obviously he didn't turn the football over. Baker Mayfield has had a problem doing that. But another thing that I think the Panthers did really well that's a little understated is how well they ran the football in this game, and ran it often as well. Foreman had a great game.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he had 24 rushes. So that's sort of the game plan when you have a quarterback who's coming back and who hasn't played in a long time. And, Sam Darnold's criticized very often, but I think you got to stick with him. I think we've seen that Baker Mayfield is not the answer for the Panthers at quarterback. I've been surprised because I felt like this was a perfect situation for Baker, that he was going to finally be healthy again and be able to show, what he could do with basically a fresh start. I was wrong. I was dead wrong about him. So you got to give Sam Darnold credit for this win. But, like you said at the top, the Broncos are just a bad football team, and it really all starts with Russell Wilson and his just ineffectiveness at quarterback. Here's a guy, to quote the great Chris Collinsworth, 19 of 35 in this game. It's just brutally bad. And it really says a lot when you have your defensive players yelling at your quarterback. But then, like you said, of course, you invite the whole team to your birthday party and only half the team shows up. They really don't like Russell Wilson. It's quite plain to see. I can't wrap my head around why he's played as bad as he has. I know his last couple years in Seattle, we talked about it on here, and everyone else had his performance and quality of performance really dropped off in those last couple years. But of course he was getting hit a lot, facing some lingering injury issues. It's just a complete miss with this trade. And I don't know if it's the worst trade of all time. Cause who was it? I think it was the Saints traded away their whole draft for Ricky Williams, like way back in the late 90s. I think that takes the cake for the worst trade of all time. But this one has to be up there. Especially when you're talking about the egregious amount of money that he is robbing from this franchise right now. It's inexplicable. It's just inexplicable. I mean, as shocked as I was about Baker Mayfield, this one it just baffles me every week because you keep thinking he's going to turn the corner. He's finally going to have a game where he looks like his old self. It just hasn't happened. And it just continues to blow my mind how bad he has played and now his teammates are turning against him, and that's a bad sign when it's not even your first full season with your new team, and your own teammates are turning against you already. Just a nutty situation.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think, but I don't think you can necessarily put it all on Russell. Like Russell Wilson definitely deserves a good chunk of the blame because like this is like you're brought in here to be the guy. Like, what are we doing? Like come on, like let's go. But I think also they just made the wrong coaching decision. Nathaniel Hackett is clearly out of his depth. He's not ready to be a head coach.
Agreed.
He's been awful this season. I mean, this is a team. I mean, again. What do we bring up every week? This was supposed to be the division that was going to be the group of death. You had four teams that on paper are absolute killers. And somehow it turns out two of them are paper tigers. One of them is just always cursed with bad luck, and then the other one's the Chiefs, who are always good. Like you just can never beat them. So I agree with you on a lot of it, but I do think Nathaniel Hackett also deserves a lot of the blame.
Agreed.
It's clear that he's just not ready to be a head coach. So, yeah, with that, again, the Panthers beating the Broncos 23-20. I mean, do we really have to talk about the Jets Bears, or do we just kind of skip this one?
We can gloss over that one. I don't think there's much to say.
I mean, the Jets get the win. In the first game of the Mike White era, of course, this is the first game where they benched what's his name, Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson, yeah.
I'm already forgetting him. like that's how memorable his run has been.
So are the Jets. So yeah,
I mean, it's a good choice. Yeah, they beat the Bears 31-10. Of course, the Bears were down to their third string quarterback because Simeon hurt his oblique. In warm-ups, and of course Fields was ruled out for this game. So a good win for the Jets to win it 31-10. Good for them. So let's move on to the next game. I wish Kirby was still back on, but he's still doing his business. But we move on to the Commanders beating the Falcons 19-13. Dan, as it stands right now, all four NFC East teams are in the playoffs.
They're in.
All Taylor Heineke does is win. The legend of Heineke continues, and it's not necessarily always pretty, but I mean, the team clearly responds to him, and that's why they named him their starting quarterback over Carson Wentz. What did you think of Washington's performance? And what do you think about this whole Marcus Mariota experiment going on in Atlanta?
Yeah, I think as far as the Commanders, I mean, they've been impressive. I mean, let's face it, since Taylor Heineke has taken the helm, I feel like they have a new energy. And you kind of said that. I feel like his teammates rally around him. They love this guy. They would, I don't know if they'd run through a brick wall for him, but certainly, I feel like there's a lot of trust being built there between Heineke and his teammates, and that's huge. I mean, if you remember in the playoff game against Tampa, I think that was the playoff game, where Chase Young, he scores the touchdown, Chase Young points to his jersey. I think that was sort of the start for how his teammates began to really trust him and respond well to him. But also what I was really impressed with is the fact that Brian Robinson, I mean, he's had an insane comeback after the tragic, well, it wasn't tragic because, he didn't pass away, obviously, but just the insane, after the gunshot wound.
Yeah.
Yeah. That he had, and he has come back this season, and the way he's played, he runs the football with, ferocity that I haven't seen in a long time. And I don't exclusively watch the Commanders. I watch a lot of Red Zone, so I see, I kind of see what every team does. But yeah, he's been, I think, one of the biggest parts of this team, understated. And obviously his story is just, his comeback this year. I don't know if he's comeback player of the year, but certainly he's got to be in the consideration. And yeah, and Heineke, like you said, it wasn't necessarily perfect. It wasn't pretty all the time. But the thing is, he's won football games for them. Now they're 7-5. They're 2 games above 500. When's the last time we could say that about Washington? At this point in the season, I really don't know. I can't remember the last time we could say that, but
I mean, it's been a
Um,
while.
it's been a long time. I think so. I think I've been very impressed with the Commanders. Definitely, they've played better than I thought they would. And I don't know if long term Heineke's the guy. I can't answer that question. What I can tell you is he's the short term answer. There's no way you can ever bring Carson Wentz back. I don't care if he's fully healthy or not. So, yeah. So Kirby wants us to say some good things about the team. We're doing that now. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, man.
She has no faith that we will say good things. And Kirby's right in his comments here. I mean, the defense played extremely well. On top of that, and we talked about. I mean, your other question was about Marcus Mariota. I think the Falcons are just trying to figure out what they have, and they found out that they don't have much. I think that's just the conclusion they can come to. They've got to start over. I think they got to start from the ground up, and this team is pretty much a pretty steady state rebuild at this point. And Marcus Mariota, I think he's been given, this was it's kind of his final chance, I think, to be a starter in this league. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, but he's had several opportunities and it just has never panned out. And I think it's coming down to the end here. So I like Marcus Mariota, but he just hasn't performed.
Yeah, he definitely hasn't lived up to the hype that he had coming out of college. Of course, like I brought up before, he was a former Heisman, trophy winner and everything. He just hasn't lived up to it. So for me, like I would agree with you. I don't necessarily know if Taylor Heineke's the answer. I don't think he's the long-term answer, but I agree he's the short-term answer. He's definitely like right now, just don't ruin a good thing, right? Like you guys are winning games with him. The defense is playing stout, and they're about to get Chase Young back. So obviously, we don't know how great Chase Young is going to be coming back from an ACL, but at least like you got more coming back. Okay. Sorry, Kirby's sending us messages on what his thoughts on the game was, but yeah, no, I mean like it was a good game for the Commanders. I mean, like I said, right now they're in the playoffs, and I think right now the Commanders are more so peaking. I think they're on the come up where the Giants are on the come down. So I think
it's a good point.
I think and injuries factor into why the Giants are also on the come down too. We have to also factor that in. I forgot to mention that during the Cowboys Giants segment. Is that the Giants are dealing with a lot of injuries right now. But for me, the Commanders are just like if anything, if one team is going to be left out of the NFC East, I could see the Giants being left out more than the Commanders. I think the Commanders are playing very well. I think Brian Robinson really adds a new dynamic to this, to this offense. He just has such a strange running style. He's very upright.
Yeah.
Most guys are very like low to the ground, type running backs, but like he's very upright.
Makes him hard to tackle. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said earlier, it's been a year of terrible tackling in the NFL also.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really have much else to say on this. I mean, I've just been impressed with the Commanders' bounce back, and I attribute that mostly to the change at quarterback because now they don't necessarily have a quarterback who is like, sure, Heineke's going to make a boneheaded mistake every now and again, but he's not going to cost you the game the way a Carson Wentz would cost you the game.
Yeah, and I think he gives them an energy that they haven't had. Let me think back here. I mean, I guess you could say Kirk Cousins brought some of that RG3 in his rookie season. That's really
Alex Smith brought it to them.
Yeah, so that's just hard to find. If you can capture that, it's sort of like lightning in a bottle, and I think that's kind of what they have with Heineke right now. I mean, I'm not going to go too far, but maybe lightning in a bottle is a poor analogy to use. But yeah, I think they just have to ride the wave right now, and I think there's going to be some ups and downs throughout the rest of this season. But the key thing for the Commanders is, I mean, that defense is solid. They can help you win games as well. Don't discount them either. So I think that'll be a big thing going down the stretch as well, especially in this division.
Agreed. So again, the Commanders beating the Falcons 19-13. We go out to Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland! This is for you. The Cleveland Browns beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-17 in overtime. This was a god-awful game, in my opinion, by Tom Brady. It was not a great performance. I mean, Dan, like the Browns kind of setting things up for Deshaun Watson to come back. Of course, he comes back this week against the Houston Texans. So they got him a win here. So they're 4-7. The Buccaneers are 5-6. I mean, what were your thoughts on this game? What did you think of Brady's performance? I mean, he has, I guess, decent numbers. He was 29 for 43, 246 yards and 2 touchdowns. But this offense has pretty much been very ineffective all season. They just don't seem like this looks nothing like how it looked like last year. Mike Evans looks like he can barely play half the time. I mean, they have all these weapons still, but it just looks like this offense can't get going.
Well, yeah, and I think I'd say, like, similarly to what we've said with Rodgers not trusting his receivers, I kind of think Brady's at that point as well. Even guys like Mike Evans who have been there for a long time. I mean, we saw like 3 or 4 weeks ago when Mike Evans had, a wide open touchdown and he let it bounce off his hands. Just the most ridiculous drop I've seen in a long time. I think that's kind of where the Buccaneers are. I think they see the end of the road that is Tom Brady's career. And I don't care what Brady says. I know there was a comment he made the other day of, I'd rather play and lose than retire or not play, whatever verbiage he used. I think that's a ridiculous statement, but
I agree.
And he's just trying to save face and say the right things and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, the Bucs there's no rhythm on offense. And there's also just poor timing between Brady and his receivers. And I think it's something's amiss with this team. It's kind of been that way since the start of the season, and they still haven't figured it out. And I think you've seen, like, Brady's not what he was even last year. The arm strength isn't there as much. I still think he's got a decent arm, but it's not like we saw the drop off with Drew Brees at the end with the Saints, where he really could not.
Yeah,
throw
he doesn't have a noodle arm
yards. Yeah, he doesn't have a noodle arm. But there's not a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? He's not comfortable in the pocket. You can see that. The offensive line hasn't done him any favors. He's been under pressure this year more than I've seen in quite a long time. And that's thrown him off. I think it's gotten in his head. And, you can't say that the stuff going on in his personal life isn't affecting him.
It's for sure 100% affecting him.
It would affect all of us. We're all 100%. Human. We're all human beings. You know what I mean? So I think that plays a factor as well. So I think if you add all those things together, you have a Tom Brady that we really just are like, is this really happening? Like week to week, the fact that he is missing receivers, there is no trust there that you can see, and it's just been sloppy. It's been sloppy across the board for this offense. And I think for Cleveland, I've been impressed with Jacoby Brissett. I mean, he hasn't been perfect. I don't know if he's earned a starting job with any other teams. I kind of think he should be given an opportunity somewhere. And, there has to be a team out there who can give him that chance. The Browns are sort of a scrappy team, and I think Jacoby Brissett was helping with that image. Also, Nick Chubb in this game had a really, really solid game, 116 rushing yards. He is
carries, Jesus.
I'll tell you what, man, when he gets going, there are few running backs that have the same tenacity he does.
Agreed.
And I just think in general, this game, I mean, it wasn't pretty. I didn't think it was going to be, a high scoring affair. It turned out it was more of a defensive battle as we thought. But I also don't think the Browns are out of it yet, and I think this was sort of a chance for them to say we're still here. In a sense, we don't know what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. I don't think anybody knows how he's going to play. We can all predict, but he hasn't played in 2 years, so we don't know what's going to happen when he takes his first snap of this year. But I think the Browns are in a decent position. I don't know if I think winning the division's out of the question.
Yeah, it definitely is out of the question. It's out of the question. I don't know if
Yeah.
they're going to make the playoffs either, but I think they're going to at least
Right.
maybe make a run for it.
I think they can make a run. I do believe that. And yeah, the Bucks are just inexplicably dysfunctional this season.
And yet
And
somehow,
it also
some way,
makes you wonder.
they're winning the division.
Yeah, it's just a really, really bad division, man. It's disgusting, quite frankly.
They're the NFC East this year. It's so bad.
Yeah, literally. I mean, they could probably go 8-9 and win that division. I don't think there's any question about it. Which is just a travesty in my opinion.
It's a travesty because they're going to get a home game, and chances are it's going to be Dallas who has to travel there, and yet Dallas is the one that's going to have the much better record, and yet they have to go on the road. It makes that's where this whole playoff system does not make sense. It should. I mean, I understand divisions, like you have to win your division, like that's what matters. That's how you get the first 4 seeds. But in a way, it's almost like the NBA model would sometimes be better because like it would be the top teams, right? It's just seeding, But I understand like we have divisions, so it's like you have to, you should earn something for being the best team in your division. But at the same time, it's like, why should let's say Dallas goes undefeated down the stretch here, right? And they end up 14-3. Why does a 14-3 team have to go on the road to go play a 8-9 team? Like that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and it's I think the same thing happened with Washington when they won the division. When I think that was the year when Tampa Bay came to Washington.
Tampa Bay was 11-5, and Washington was 7-9, I believe.
7-9, correct? Yeah, so that's similar to what's going to happen this year, which is just nuts. But I will say most of the time it works out, and in that the teams that are the top 4 seeds are truly the best teams in that conference. But there are off years, and I think this is this is definitely an off year for the NFL in general, and for, I mean, there's going to be that team that unfortunately has to make the playoffs from this division, and it's probably going to be Tampa. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to say adios to Brady at the end of the regular season. We're going to have to watch him at least play one more game, which is just going to be, oh, come on, just end it, please.
Yeah, hopefully if it is Dallas can finally get the win on Brady, because we've never beaten Brady in franchise history, and we can send him, off to the sunset. But with that being said, the Cleveland Browns beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-17. Okay, Dan, we're here. I'm going to just give the floor to you here in a second.
Okay.
The Jacksonville Jaguars pull a stunning defeat on the Baltimore Ravens 28-27. Dan, what's the offensive coordinator's name for Baltimore again? It's Greg Roman, right?
It's the criminal, Greg Roman. That's correct.
Do you think he listens to Taylor Swift? Do you think he?
It's think me. He I'm the problem. It's me. Is that what you're going for here?
Do you think he's finally ready to admit that he's the problem?
I don't know, because I think the issue is that John Harbaugh will defend him to no end.
Do you think John Harbaugh might be the problem here too, man? Like, dang, this has been like the most. Despite the fact that the Ravens are sitting here at 7-4, they feel like such an up and down roller coaster ride of a team.
They are an up and down team. They just don't play together as a team. One side of the ball falters late in games. We've seen them now blow 4 leads this season. In all 4 of those losses. I mean, they had the lead in the 4th quarter. Like, it's inexplicable that you blow those games, but they have. This game was completely inexcusable. Your offense, the offense was terrible for, I would say, 3 quarters, maybe even a little bit into the 4th quarter, and then they finally got a touchdown late to go up 7. And I thought, okay, here we go. We have our, Super Bowl caliber defense. At least that's what I thought they were. No, they let him drive right down the field. They let Trevor Lawrence look like vintage Tom Brady. I'm just gonna boom, 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 boom. 5 plays in the end zone, like he was Patrick Mahomes. I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't understand. First of all, I don't get a lot of the coverage schemes on that last drive. Why are you playing such loose coverage? I mean, the Jags have some speedy receivers. They're going to be able to catch the ball and run after the catch. Again, I've said this over and over again. I'm a schmuck. I'm not a football coach. I'm not a guy who understands strategy very much, but come on. It just gets to a point where it's ridiculous. And unfortunately, like we said, this has become the Ravens' MO this season. They are not a team. They're a team that when they grab the lead at any point in the game, I mean, my mind immediately just goes to how can we blow this lead? In our even in our 7 wins, I think I would say maybe one of those games I didn't feel that way. I felt like against the Jets we had a pretty good handle on things, and I would say against the Patriots we also had a pretty good handle on it. That's also because Mac Jones got hurt. But other than that, every other game I've gone to, oh no, like I feel so bad. We have a 2 possession lead. How is this going to blow up in our face? And it's just unfortunate. They just haven't done what they needed to do on both sides of the ball. Lamar Jackson was criticized. I criticized him for most of this game until he drives us down the field. There in the fourth quarter, and we finally get that touchdown and the 2-point conversion to go up by 7. And it finally looks like, okay, that was an 85-yard drive. Lamar finally looked like himself. The offense finally looked like themselves. But the defense just, I just can't understand it. And Kirby says in the chat, Tucker should have made that kick. They tried out Justin Tucker to try to make a 67-yard field goal, which would have surpassed his record by a yard.
That's an insane kick to try to make.
It's nuts, and it came up 5 yards short. So the fact that's a whole nother issue. The fact that the Ravens are comfortable. I know it's Justin Tucker, right? I understand that. But the fact that they're comfortable with bringing him out there to try a 67-yard field goal shows the kind of state that this team is in. They would rather not take a chance at the end zone because I think they probably had a chance, I would say, to go to they could have gone on a Hail Mary at least once, I think, in that situation. Because I think there were I'm trying to think how much time was left. It was more than 10 seconds. It wasn't a whole lot, but it just kind of shows the state that this team is in. And Justin Tucker was the MVP of this game. I mean, he's really the reason why we even got any points to begin with. They just don't play together as a team. I think I don't know what it is. I think offensively there's just such a lack of weapons, and we've talked about this. Lamar doesn't have a lot of help. In this game specifically, I think they had 5 or 6 drop passes, 2 or 3 of those that were touchdowns. One was egregiously bad that hit I think it was Oliver right in the hands, and Andrews also had a couple of drops. Andrews, he hasn't
made the same impact this season as he normally does.
No, and he's battled injuries. I think that's played a part in it, but something's up with his psyche right now. He's got to get that straightened out, and that's concerning because he is our go-to receiver, or has been really since Lamar has been the quarterback of this team. There's just not a lot of positive things to say about this team right now, and I'm we started the conversation with Greg Roman, and it seems like John Harbaugh is just repeating the same answers over and over in press conferences when it comes to what's wrong with this team. We hear the same thing week after week. We're going to look at the tape, we're going to get better, blah, 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 blah. But they really don't do that. And that's what has me concerned, I think, right now, is the fact that there's such a lack of accountability. And look, Harbaugh's a great coach. The guy's won a Super Bowl. You can't take that away from him. He hasn't had a lot of losing seasons in this league. But after the Ravens won the Super Bowl, they missed the playoffs 4 out of the next 5 seasons. The only difference came along, and his name was Lamar Jackson. And he saved John Harbaugh's ass. I have there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It seems like the Ravens are due for a change now. It's at a crossroads, in my opinion. I don't know if you fire John Harbaugh. I don't know if you make that decision now.
I think this should be John Harbaugh's last hurrah, to be honest, because it's clear, that this team is not responding to him anymore. And he's been the coach since 2008 was when he was hired?
2008. Yeah, 14 years now.
At a certain point, like I've said, leaders like that eventually start to lose impact in the locker room, right? And it's clear. And when you've dropped and when all 4 of your losses, you were up, by 14 points, I believe it was, and you somehow managed to drop them all. It's insanity to me. And the fact also that we've been saying this about Baltimore for like 2 years now, that their issue is they have no weapons for Lamar to throw to. There's no solid guy for him to throw the ball to. And that's something they need to address. This is, it also kind of has screwed Lamar Jackson because this is his contract year. And we all agree he deserves to be paid, but it's just like at the same time, the result, like he's got games like this where he just doesn't perform. I mean, but you can't put it all on him, obviously, because the defense also made Zay Jones look like a megastar. Like the dude was lighting it up. When have we ever said Zay Jones was a solid wide receiver? Like
I forgot who he was before the game. Yeah.
He was on the Raiders last year. Nobody realized he was on the Jaguars until today.
Right, exactly.
It's insane. It's just I just don't really know how you fix this. Like I don't. There's just so many issues with the Ravens that they're good. They're a good regular season team, right? They'll get the wins. Obviously, they're 7-4 right now. My guess is they're definitely going to make the playoffs, whether it be they win the division or whether it be they end up in the wild card. I don't know, because of course they do have the Bengals right on their tails. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like they're gonna make the playoffs, but it's clearly this team is not built for the long haul. It's not built to make a Super Bowl run right now.
And it's the other thing too, you can't even sign your franchise quarterback. That you can't even come to an agreement to keep him on the squad. That and plus, you haven't given him much to work with. I mean, the last time he had decent receivers was 3 years ago when he had his MVP season. That was really the last time you could say that the Ravens had legitimate weapons. And the front office has had misses. I mean, they've drafted a Devin Duvernay. They've drafted a James Prochet. Those guys haven't worked out. I mean, it comes to a point where you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, we're just not doing enough for this guy. He's going to explore his options, right? I mean, there's going to be teams that are going to want to pay Lamar Jackson, insane amounts of money. He's going to get that from someone. And that's my biggest concern, that he goes somewhere else in the offseason. And really, the more and more frustrated he gets with this team, the more and more I think it's going to happen. And, he has every right to be frustrated. They really haven't done much to help him. This team doesn't have the same energy they had even just last year. It's an anomaly to me right now, because I don't think they're a Super Bowl quality team. I thought coming into this season, this was probably a good chance for them to at least make a playoff run of some kind. Win a couple playoff games, which is something they haven't done in a long time. It just hasn't happened yet. And I think also too, they're at a crossroads where they have to move on from Greg Roman. It's obvious his schemes on offense are not working. I saw a lot of film from on Twitter this week so far. Spacing, wide receiver spacing, routes that are being run super close together. They just don't. It's like there's no thought to the concepts, the passing concepts that this team's running. It's almost like they set Lamar up to fail, or Lamar has to run, because that's the only option he has. And I feel like that's a lot of times what Greg Roman has done to this offense. They forced Lamar to sort of run for his life, if you will, and try to make plays. And that's going to create mistakes, and it has. He's had some bad plays. So it's a complete and utter mess right now. And Lamar missed practice today. He had a quad injury in practice. He was limited. It just goes from bad to worse for this team. I just don't have a lot of confidence right now. I thought the defense was the saving grace. And in that first half against Jacksonville, they really did a great job getting after Trevor Lawrence, keeping their receivers in check. But I don't know what changes for them to be such a different team from the third quarter to the fourth quarter, quite frankly. And it's just a lot of questions to be answered for this team right now, and I don't think there's a lot of easy solutions at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I do want to just a quick note on Jacksonville. I mean, it's clear, they finally have adults in the room. And the Jaguars look great. They look really good. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's on the right path. And it'll be interesting to see how they look like next season when they get Ridley in there to kind of help with that offense. All right, that was the 1 o'clock.
I just want to say I really like what Doug Peterson has done.
Oh yeah, 100%. The Jags fans need to just be patient with him. They just need to be patient with him. Let this process play out. Let him build what he built in Philadelphia, because he did build Philadelphia to be a Super Bowl winning team. So let him do that, and we'll see where Jacksonville can go from here. So with that, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk. We'll run quickly through the 4 o'clock games.
Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barnwood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram, or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com.
All right, welcome back. All right, Dan, let's get through this. All right, we'll start off in Seattle. The Raiders and the Seahawks play to an overtime thriller. Josh Jacobs makes the last-second scamper to the end zone, and the Raiders pull off the victory 40-34. What did you think of this performance? Is this going to jumpstart the Raiders season a little bit? I don't think they're going to make the playoffs at this point, but does this help them? And then also, Seattle, I mean, this kind of hurt their chances of winning the division. So do you think that they're still in the race to make it into the playoffs? Because right now they're on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think this is a big one for the Raiders. I don't know if it jumpstarts their season. I know we've been waiting for them to finally have a game where they look like they put it all together. I don't think they put it all together in this game necessarily. I think they just gave the ball to Josh Jacobs and said, please do your best. And
33 carries for 229 yards, 2 touchdowns.
And he delivered.
He went off.
Man, he delivered well. Seattle, and they're the defensive old for them, and I mean old is I'm sure they miss the Legion of Boom now. Watching that kind of performance again at their home stadium, which, by the way, tough environment to play in. You got to give give the Raiders credit for going in there and taking care of business. I think this is a good one for the Raiders. I don't know if it jumpstarts their season. I think it gives them some confidence moving forward for sure. Like I said, I think going in that environment and getting the win is huge. Derek Carr also had a pretty good game as well. Let's not overlook that. This was a very high-scoring game. Really, both teams' defenses were suffocated. They had no answers. So it's a good win for the Raiders. I think as far as and a career day for Josh Jacobs, of course, with a huge touchdown run at the end where he was, I mean, let's face it,
virtually untouched.
The hole he had, you could drive like 2 semi-trucks through, and they would have had clear sailing. So got to give credit to the O-line for that one. I think you got to credit the O-line in general in this game for the Raiders for how well they blocked. I think for the Seahawks, you are right. I mean, they're obviously on the outside looking in. This is a game they had to have. The Raiders were sort of limping into this game. And this is a gimme type game at home. Again, I can't state this enough. Seattle, the 12th man, which literally they had a 12th man come out and block.
They
or attempt to
did.
block
They
for
did.
Seattle.
They did.
I've never seen that in my life, and the fact that it wasn't a penalty is just nuts.
He kind of snuck onto the field. It was in the midst of the chaos, so obviously I don't think the ref saw it. The way it was explained was that he thought that the player was down, so that's why he ran onto the field to kind of go celebrate with him. Because I believe that was on what? And that wasn't an interception, was it? If I remember correctly, or was it an interception?
I think so. I'd have to go back and I can't remember because I was going to ask you if you knew.
I believe it was on one of the picks that incident
Yes.
occurred, and he came out onto the field thinking that the play was dead, and then it wasn't dead. So, but he didn't get caught, so I guess that's all that matters.
It's just odd. Like you wouldn't think that would happen, and especially because like you play to the whistle, right? That's what they say. Just bizarre, just a bizarre sequence. But yeah, I think Seattle. I mean, they desperately needed this game. This division is interesting to me because obviously, the Rams aren't what they were this year. Aren't what they were last year. We know that. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But this division, and I have to see the standings real quick because I was gonna.
Right now, it's the Rams in last place. Then goes the Cardinals. Then it's the Seahawks, and then it's the 49ers. So,
I think Seattle's going to have a hard time just because I think if you see how the Niners have played, we talked about this earlier. They're peaking at the right time. It's going to be tough to outrun them, especially now with what Christian McCaffrey has brought to the table for this team. Just another wrinkle in that offense that really, really helps Jimmy G out. So I think Seattle's going to have a tough time making the postseason. But you got to give Pete Carroll some credit. I mean, nobody thought that Geno Smith was going to be able to step in and play as well as he's played this season. And maybe he's used up all that good play, and down the stretch he'll struggle and look like the quarterback we all suspected he was. I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
But,
I think Geno's going to play well. It's just a matter of did they lose too much ground right now? Because you do have to factor in the fact that Washington does like if in the playoff standings right now, Washington is above them at 7-5 too. Right, they're the number 7 seed. You have to factor in the fact that the Washington still has a game against the 49ers coming up, so that could easily give them a loss. And then if Seattle can continue winning, they will eventually overtake Washington. So it's not out of reach yet, but it's definitely like you better hope that some things have to go in their favor.
Yeah, and again, I think you have to take advantage of the opponents you're facing, and they just didn't do that. I think they took the Raiders for granted, and we've seen the Raiders play some ugly football this year. There's no question. But you gotta, both offenses just had a field day. And Josh Jacobs, that's just a nutty stat line. I don't know if you said what it was, but he had
Josh Jacobs. Yeah, I said he had. I said at the beginning, 33 carries, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns. Yeah,
it's just nuts. It's just nuts.
Yeah, that's an insane stat line.
I don't think I have anything else about this game. I thought it was as far as the afternoon games, I felt like this was the only one that it was really interesting. I
guess. The next one was also interesting.
Well, yeah. I guess there was another one that was pretty interesting.
If you guys were watching the YouTube feed and you saw my facial reaction just a second ago, I just gotta say,
sorry.
There's some wild stuff going on in college football right now. Like 2 stories just broke. One about the John Kitna's son, and then the other one about Nebraska's interim head coach. It's going wild in college football right now. So. Obviously not going to really get into those stories, but just a lot of wild stuff happening. So the Raiders beating the Seahawks 40-34. Let's head out to Arizona and the Kyler Murray show. Woo! I'm so excited. The Chargers pull out a squeaker and beat the Cardinals 25-24. Obviously in the press conference, Kyler Murray saying that schematically the Cardinals were expletive. I can't curse on this podcast. And do you think that it's finally starting to dawn on the Cardinals, organization that, hey, maybe Cliff Kingsbury isn't the guy, and like he just doesn't know what he's doing? Because there was really no reason why they should have lost this game. They were pretty much in control for most of it, and then it wasn't until the Chargers got a touchdown and a 2-point conversion in the fourth quarter that they pulled out the win.
And not to mention, you're facing a team that's extremely banged up. I mean, the Chargers, they have an insane amount of injuries, and they have guys every week that seemingly get hurt. So the fact that the Cardinals still struggled in that respect, it's easy to see that, like, and I think all three of us, including Kirby, have been saying for a while that we just didn't understand what the fascination was with Cliff Kingsbury, why he even got this job to begin with.
He somehow failed his way up. I don't understand.
I think it's because he had a good head of hair that got him. He had the sort of McVay look. You know what I mean? It's just a strange situation, and it's really bad when you see, because I think, I don't know if we saw it in this game, but we've seen it this season where Kyler and Cliff kind of get into it a little bit on the sidelines. I think that happens between coaches and quarterbacks. Usually not during games, though. We usually hear about it, during practice or in the film session or whatever. Not a good look to have it happen several times during the season, and it has. I'm not going to defend Kyler. I think he's probably the most overrated quarterback in the National Football League.
Like I said, does not deserve that contract that he got.
It's just nuts. I don't know what else the Cardinals have to see, and how much more slack they're going to give Cliff Kingsbury, because it would appear that they're going to give him at least till the end of the season, depending on how it turns out. But I don't know how you can bring him back. I just don't. It's obvious that it hasn't worked. And it's really bad when you're, like you said, your quarterback in the press conference of the game is saying we're schematically effed. That's just a whole other situation. Oh man, they're a mess of an organization right now.
Yeah.
Let's just say there is no organization in Arizona, and it's just dysfunctional. I mean, that's just the only way I would say it right now, and it's not going to get any easier for them. I don't think so. This is a pretty much an upset win for the Cardinals, like you said at the top. I mean, this is a team that
the Cardinals.
Did I say Cardinals?
You said Cardinals.
My bad. It's a big upset win for them, and Justin Herbert played really well, and he gets a lot of praise as well. I think sometimes the media likes to give him a little too much love, but I think in this game this was well deserved. I mean, his stat line is extremely impressive. And the fact that, again, week to week, his receivers, you don't know who's going to play, right? I mean, you have guys that are just constantly going down and getting injured. The fact that he's still able to play at a consistent level has been pretty nice. And Brandon Staley keeps his job at least another week. So I don't know how sustainable that is either.
He's keeping it for now, so that's all that matters. So the
there were no timeouts late in the game that ruined things this time. So
hey, at least he's learning, because we're going to eventually talk about a coach who just
didn't.
Yikes. So the Chargers pulling off the upset, 25-24 on Arizona. Let's go out to San Francisco. I don't really have much to say on this game. The 49ers beat the Saints 13-0. It wasn't really that exciting of a game. Jimmy G didn't necessarily have, a lights out performance. Neither did Dalton. Of course, Garoppolo did throw one touchdown to Jennings, so that's good for him. I mean, there's not much to say here. It was a good win by the 49ers. Clearly, their bread and butter is going to be their defense, who I think they haven't had a touchdown scored on them in like the last 96 minutes of football, something like that. Some crazy stat like that I heard today. I mean, I don't have much to say. Do you have anything to say about this game?
Not really. it's just great teams find a way to win. Like I said earlier, no matter how ugly, and this game was ugly, especially offensively, if you were into that. But yeah, Andy Dalton is you just don't know which Andy Dalton you're going to get week to week, and that was never more apparent than in this game. And yeah, I have nothing else to add to that. I felt like the Niners did just enough to win, and the Saints were just no competition in this game. Niners defense is really, really stout. I mean, just like you stated, and that's what I think is going to really help them if they're going to make a run in the postseason. It's going to be that defense is going to have to do a lot, and I think they can.
Agreed. All right, let's go out to Arrowhead Stadium and the home of the Chiefs. Yes, the Kansas City Chiefs beat the banged up Los Angeles Rams 26-10. Of course, the Rams brought out their third string quarterback, Brian Perkins, I believe his name? Bryce Perkins. You see, I don't even know the dude's name. That's how irrelevant he was. UVA kid got his first touchdown of his career, but threw 2 picks while in the process, 13 for 23. But the story, it was kind of a lackluster Chiefs win, honestly. It just kind of felt like they were more so looking forward to the Bengals game because they knew they had this game in hand. The Rams are obviously, like we've said, are nothing like they used to be. This is the bill has come due for everything that they put into trying to win the Super Bowl last year.
I like that.
Patrick Mahomes, pretty, I guess by his standards, pretty pedestrian stat line, 27 for 42, 320 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 awful interception in the end zone, which shows, hey, this guy's human. Sometimes his improv plays don't necessarily always work out, because that was a terrible pick. It was like there was no zip on that ball. Pacheco had a pretty solid game, I thought. Travis Kelce, of course, had a great game. MVS is kind of just like, sometimes you just wonder why he's part of the team, because like he just doesn't really make the same impact plays. But I thought, it was good to see that, Juju Smith-Schuster was able to play in this game. Obviously, he didn't really do too much just because, they're still being cautious with him, because that was I'm going to imagine that was a pretty bad interception. Or, I'm sorry, concussion. Sorry, my mind was somewhere else. My bad. But yeah, I mean, not much to really say on this game. It was a pretty standard Chiefs win, I don't know if you got anything on it, Dan.
Not a lot. I think you covered it well. This was a game where you could sort of see the Chiefs were just kind of coasting through it. They knew they didn't have much to worry about, especially when you're facing Bryce Perkins, who, there was no tape on. Obviously, he's never played a snap. So it's like, what are you going to do? And it's already a Rams team that was already suffering enough as it was. And, when Bryce Perkins is leading you in rushing with 44 yards, you really don't have much to worry about either.
They've never had a running game, though.
They haven't.
Yeah.
I guess what's I was trying to think. Sony Michel, right? He was decent. I mean, that was probably the last sort of decent running back they had. I'm trying to think of how long ago that was now. Was that
I would say
year?
Melvin Gordon was their last great running back.
Going back, yeah, probably.
Yeah, going back, because then he got a major contract after that, and just completely fell off. So
and then he went to the Broncos, right? If I remember correctly.
Melvin Gordon? Am I talking about the same guy? No, he went to Atlanta.
Melvin Gordon.
Am I thinking of the same guy? Melvin Gordon?
I thought he also played for Denver. Maybe that was later on.
I don't know. I might be thinking of the wrong guy. Who was the guy? He had dreads. Whatever. It's irrelevant. They had a running back a while ago.
Yeah. I think he was drafted by them, but yeah. Anyway.
He was out of Georgia.
Yeah, correct.
I think it was Gordon, now that I think about it. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah. Just hard to remember any of this stuff anymore.
I'm positive it was Melvin Gordon.
But yeah, I don't have much to add. I think the Chiefs took care of business just like they should.
No,
and,
it was not Melvin Gordon. Whoops.
It wasn't.
It was not. Just keep going, I guess. I'll find out.
I don't have anything else to add. I think you covered it well. This is sort of you don't like to say a tune-up game, but to prepare for Cincinnati, I feel like
Todd Gurley. It was Todd Gurley.
Gurley.
That's who it was. I knew it was a guy with a G.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Gurley. There you go. I was gonna say because
There you
I was like, Gordon played for the Broncos.
Gordon played for the Chargers. That's why. So he was an LA running back. He just wasn't with the Rams. He was the Chargers.
That's right. It's just hard to remember any of this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
That's why Google is the king.
Exactly.
I have nothing else to add. I'm just gonna babble on and on if you keep let me keep going. So I think we can move on.
Yep. The Chiefs win 26-10. All right, we're gonna take a quick break and we're gonna talk about the 2 primetime games and then we're gonna get out of here. So we'll see you on the other side.
Hey, sports fans! Thank you for listening to and supporting the Kirby on Sports podcast with founder and host Josh Kirby, along with lead contributor Dan Dembski. Like, subscribe, and give them a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast from. My name is Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Our company helps leaders build engaged and productive teams. Exclusively for listeners of the Kirby on Sports podcast, you can take an opportunity to discover your primary communication style and learn more about effective communication with others. Text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free copy of the Working From Home Communication Assessment, where you'll learn your primary communication style, how to better communicate with others not like you, and tips on working remotely based on your personal communication style. 10 minutes, tons of resources. Learn about yourself and your team. Again, text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free assessment report today. I'm Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, where we help you and your team be more engaged and productive by understanding each other better. Back to you, Josh.
Well, I am not Josh. I am Carlos. So back to you, Carlos. Thank you.
That was good. That was really good.
All right.
Respect.
Sunday Night Football. Philadelphia
Yeah.
Eagles take on the Green Bay Packers. This game was obviously the big storyline was the fact that Aaron Rodgers left the game. And then we had a Jordan Love sighting, and Jordan Love looked good. He looked good. He made some pretty key passes.
What was his 3rd or 4th pass? Was a touchdown or something? I can't remember exactly how many.
I believe it was his 4th pass. I believe so.
4th pass. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you got a chance to look at the future there, which was good for Green Bay because you can see the writing on the wall. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, woof. He has been
really
dreadful this season, just dreadful. And he's lost a lot.
I guess we'd be remiss if we also didn't talk about Jalen Hurts, man. He was an absolute animal in this game.
He's such a weapon. We've talked in the past, of course, about Lamar Jackson and sort of his what he brings to not only the passing game but the running game. And I think Hurts does the same exact thing. This game, it just goes to the extreme. He had more rushing yards, 157 rushing yards for a quarterback. And then he had 153.
Majority of those in the first quarter.
Right. And then 153 passing yards. So he had just an insane game, and he's such a dynamic player. And he's the reason why Philly, I think, is in this situation. I mean, without him, this team is probably on the cusp of being a playoff team. But they're certainly not in this situation where they're 10-1 now and just dominating. I think the main thing for this game is, the Packers really kept it close in the first half, 27-20 at the half. And then I felt like the Eagles obviously got out to that 34-20 lead in the third quarter. And that's when I think it was pretty much set in stone. This game was over. The Packers made a little bit of a comeback, but you talk about sort of garbage time points. That's kind of what it seemed like it was from from Green Bay. Just a little bit. Maybe not to the extreme that some of these other teams do. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles there's a reason they're 10-1, and it's Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's really it. His full potential is being shown week after week, and he's just been so impressive. And on the flip side, the Packers they right now they don't have an identity. They just don't, and I think it's another reason to maybe you do, riff Rodgers, even if he thinks he can play. Maybe you give Jordan Love the ball and say, okay, it's your offense now. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think if Rodgers if he's sort of healthy and he wants to play, do they let him play, or do they say, no, we're going to let the young guy?
He's come out and said that he's going to play. Yeah, he said it on McAfee's show that no matter what, he's like, if he can get out there, he's going to play. To me, I just think, listen, it's clear that this season is a dud. Rodgers is hurt. His thumb is still broken. Now he's got a rib injury, I guess it is. I'm not entirely sure what's necessarily wrong with him.
I think it was his rib.
Just call it. Just call it. Like, let's see what Jordan Love has. Let's let him have a little bit of a go here. Down the stretch. I just don't. Obviously that'll cause such a huge controversy. Because people are going to be like, oh, is this the start of the Jordan Love era? Which I believe it's about time. This dude was drafted 3 years ago. Aaron Rodgers, didn't want to sit on the bench forever also when he was behind Brett Favre. So,
and he sat for a good time too. I think it was about 3 years as well.
It was about the same. It was about the same amount of time. So, I mean, at some point they drafted Jordan Love for a reason. Use him. He looked solid in this game. I thought he looked really good. He definitely cleaned up a lot of things that he had issues with last year when he did get a chance to start because the whole COVID situation with Aaron Rodgers. So, and on Jalen Hurts, I agree 100% that like he's a playmaker, man. Like you saw it, like the Packers defense had no answers for him. They couldn't tackle him, which was surprising, but also it looked like very poor tackling that they were trying to do with him. It's just like, wrap the guy up, stop going for his legs. Like, what are you doing? He made plays and he looked good. It was a good bounce back game because obviously he was getting a lot of criticism for the Indianapolis game. So for him to come out and perform the way he did here was great. I think there's a lot of question marks on this Philly defense right now because, again, they were up 14-0, relatively quickly on the Packers. And then the Packers, actually, I believe it was 13-0. And then quickly the Packers came back and scored 2 touchdowns. Yep. Yeah, and it was just like, whoa, okay, this is not going to be a blowout. It felt like it was going to be a blowout, but now it's going to be a game. And Rodgers and then also Jordan Love kind of kept the Packers in it. And I think that's a problem because, again, when you go up against like a Dallas coming up soon, that's not going to fly. Like Dallas is going to jump on that all day. And we know that Dallas defense is going to, to figure out Jalen Hurts because they're a much better defense than Green Bay's is. But, solid win for the Eagles. We saw some glimpses of the future for the Packers. It'll be interesting to see where things go from here.
Yeah, I think you summarized it perfectly. I don't have anything else to add. We just continue to wait for the Eagles to fold in one of these games. They haven't done it, and so maybe it's not coming. I don't know. I think it's going to be tough to finish 16-1, but that's just my opinion.
I doubt they do. They do have a tough game against Tennessee coming up too. So does Dallas. Dallas has a tough game against Tennessee also. But then also there is the Dallas game too. And then they still got 2 games against the Giants. You never know what's going to happen there.
Right.
We saw Washington was able to pull out the win. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So again, the Eagles beating the Packers 40-33. All right, we can kind of jump through this game real quickly. The Steelers beating the Colts 24-17. Obviously, the big thing here is that Jeff Saturday did not call any of his timeouts in that last drive, and Kenny Pickett getting another win.
Yeah, this was a nice win for Kenny Pickett, and he played. He played pretty well. I mean, he only missed 8 passes, didn't throw a touchdown, but the way the Steelers utilized the running game, he didn't really need to have a touchdown. It would have helped for sure. But I mean, you're right about the storyline. It's all about the fact that the Colts were in striking distance to tie this game up, and for whatever reason, Jeff Saturday would let the clock just drain, and didn't take a timeout. And we've seen coaches do this all the time. Maybe not
I
all
really
the time.
don't
I shouldn't say all the
understand
time.
it.
But-
It's been an issue with new coaches lately. It feels like in like the past 3
Yeah.
seasons where they just have poor clock management. I don't understand it because like us at home, we have I don't understand why at home we feel like we have a better sense of the clock than the coaches do. Like you're in the game, like just look at the clock. Like if you feel like you need to call a timeout, call a timeout. It's not hard. This isn't hard to
And it-
do.
And maybe that's the problem. Maybe they're not looking at the clock and they're not listening to the coordinators or whoever when it comes to take a timeout. I want to know what they were saying into his headset. That's really what I want to know. Were they telling him like take a timeout, or were they letting him sort of coach in the moment because he is a new coach and they want him to sort of get his feet under him? I don't know. I mean, you have spotters that look at all of that stuff, right? Like you have to know in that situation how many timeouts you have. What's on the play clock and what's on the game clock, and it was just a mess. It was a mess, and just obviously the criticism of he shouldn't be a head coach was like the immediate thing. I don't necessarily. I mean, I don't know why they hired him to be an interim head coach because he has no experience. Obviously, like I talked about before, like he understands the Colts. I mean, better than. I mean, Peyton Manning's probably the only one, like I said, who understands it better. But besides that, like he doesn't have any experience at all, and that inexperience showed. I mean, we saw like you have your team at least a chance to tie the game. Also, Matt Ryan running the ball was really strange. I don't know when the last time we saw Matt Ryan run for more than like 3 yards. Maybe their Super Bowl appearance
Years
season,
ago.
but it's been a long time. So that was weird in and of itself, but. Yeah, this was a good win for a good confidence booster for Kenny Pickett and for Pittsburgh, and this was sort of a must-win game, I think, for them in this situation. So, yeah, my hats off to Pittsburgh. As much as I hate to say that, but what can you do? I mean, they earned it in this game.
Agreed. Steelers beating the Colts 24-17. Dan, we did it. We ran through the gauntlet.
Woo!
The drive is over. We ended in a touchdown, I guess you could say. I don't know. We took forever to do that, almost 2 hours. I don't think the new format really helped on timing, but I think it actually made things longer. So we might have to discuss some of that off air.
We'll have a production meeting about that. Yeah,
definitely. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. I mean, anything
good.
you're looking forward to today? I mean, I obviously have some things, or anything you're looking forward to this weekend?
You mentioned Titans Eagles. I think that's a really good matchup. Get to see if another tough matchup for the Eagles. See if they are legitimate. We keep waiting for them to slip up, like I said. So that's a good one. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot of other games. I think. Let me see if I can pick one more game, just because there's
Chiefs Bengals,
there's not a lot.
Chiefs Bengals.
Okay, Chiefs.
That's
Chiefs,
game of
Bengals
that's
is a good
game of the
one.
week.
That's game of the week. You're right. There it is. Okay, you got me there. That's definitely the one that's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
And that game that's in Cincinnati, right?
Yep. That's
and that's in Cincinnati.
Um,
So you go for it. So obviously that game are there any other games or anything else in the sports world you're looking out for? Because obviously the World Cup, right? Like, come on, you can't. Yeah, I mean
the boys and the baby Eagles, the boys in blue, they made it. They made it out of the group stage.
Crazy.
Into the round of 16. We faced the Netherlands. Listen, Dan, there's only 2 people I can't stand: those who are intolerant of other people's culture, and the Dutch. Okay? Those are the 2 people I can't stand.
There it
All
is.
right? So, with that being said, the United States takes on Netherlands I believe the game kicks off at 11 in the morning, which, that's not terrible for, a Saturday. By that point, I should be up. So, the plan is to get some breakfast, bring it home, watch the game, all that
Good
stuff.
times.
So,
Saturday, right? Saturday
morning.
Good.
Saturday
I don't
morning.
I do not want to miss that.
Nah, I mean, yeah, thus far, it has been a successful This is a deemed successful World Cup. We got out of the group stage, we
Agreed.
made it to the round of 16. You got to also factor in, like, we weren't in the World Cup last time. So I don't want to go into a whole World Cup rant here, but I'm definitely excited for that. And of course, I'm excited for Chiefs, Bengals, and Cowboys, Colts. Anything that has to do with my teams, I'm excited to watch.
You gotta love it. Yeah.
So Dan, this was a lot of fun. Let's do this again next week.
Let's do it.
Kirby, of course, he's backstage. He's doing some stuff. So unfortunately, he couldn't really be involved in the show too much, but we did get to hear from him for a little bit. So, thanks again to Kirby for everything.
Always.
Of course, check us out at www.kirbyonsports.com. And of course, we have to thank our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate, and Barrett Pest and Termite Services. With that being said, I am Carlos the Swiss Army Knife Martinez, and we will catch you guys next week. Later.